Right. Talk to me, man. This this it feels like a funeral. This feels like the end of an era. This clearly is the end of this iteration of the Miami Dolphins, bro. So before we get into the macro stuff, man, let me just get your perspective on it, man. Talk to me, man. What's up, bro?
Herbie, if I had one word to describe this whole occurrence, I would say that it's bittersweet. And to be honest, long overdue. Herbie, I was one of the champions of Tua for many of his seasons here, right? I never considered myself Tua a non. I was never that degree, but Tua was my guy. He was my guy. He looked good in McDaniel's scheme. I put a lot of emphasis on his relationship with Flores and how it didn't work. But ultimately, Herbie, I, to be honest, I felt empty because this was inevitable, right? Like I have long since maybe the official funeral for Tua is today, Herbie, but I have long since my grieving process started since the beginning of the season. And like I said, it's bittersweet. And with Tua now being on the bench, Herbie, it's the sad thing is, Herbie, the sad thing is that I'm sure deep down he wishes he could be who he once was. But between him re-aggravating his hip last year, between the concussions, between just and Herbie, even just the way he's played this season, just from a quarterback efficiency mental standpoint. Like, all right, you don't got it with your hip anymore, which means you ain't got it with your arm. But Herbie, that interception he throws on Monday night against the Steelers, Herbie, I'm a guy who watches the games from my couch. And I could tell you, if I look to my left and I have one receiver and there's an underneath defender and a defender over the top, and there's no oncoming route to force the underneath defender to have to make a choice, Herbie, I'm not throwing that ball there. Like, dude, you're 6 years in and you're making mental mistakes like that. Like forget how terrible the pass was. That it was a wobbly duck that had no zip. Just the fact that you even made that decision as an NFL quarterback, Herbie, given the experience you have, given how well you've played, Herbie, Tua has had some monster games in his NFL career, right? And first of all, shout out to Happy Evelyn. Shout out to Happy Evelyn. I see your comment,
Whoa,
man.
we'll get to the comment, man. Stick the landing, Rod. Stick the landing. Stick the landing. I'm just showing. I'm cycling through the comments. I didn't mean to
Yeah,
distract you, brother.
yeah. No, no, you good, you good. I appreciate. I appreciate it. And look, I don't think anybody is expecting anything out of Quinn Ewers, right? We have reached a point, Herbie, to where we are just better off just seeing what we have left on the roster. I'm not one of those people who expects Quinn Ewers to save the franchise, right? Like Dolphins fans, because we've been starved for a quarterback, there's a small sect of our fandom that often believes that the backup is the savior, Herbie. That's what happens when you go years without a dominant quarterback. But back to my point on Tua, Herbie. It's a shame, man. It's a shame, man, because when 2023 happened, and the way, even though we flamed out in inglorious fashion, I was foolish enough to believe that it was the beginning rather than the peak. Right? I didn't realize that that would be the heights that we would have reached in this regime, Herbie. I thought maybe we were gonna see even more growth in between injuries and all kind of things. Things didn't work out. But Herbie, Tua has regressed, man, quite a bit. And he's regressed physically, he's regressed mentally. And I ain't gonna hold you, Herbie. To see this guy on the sideline laughing it up in a loss where he was the determining factor. Herbie, people have to understand, we won 4 games straight in spite of our quarterback. Like, it's not like we were winning 4 games straight because of the guy.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm
for
saying?
sure.
Like, we no, like we were winning in spite of him. So Herbie, this was long overdue. And at the very least, Dolphins fans have the interest factor of, well, let's see what we have in Quinn. Let's see if Zach Wilson looks like anything, even though we know the answers. We
Yeah,
know
for
the
sure,
answers.
for
We
sure.
know we know how these movies end, but like you said, Herbie, this is the Tua has walked the plank, Herbie, and the crocodile's mouth is wide open.
Yeah,
That's
man. And let me go ahead and just get to this comment from Rashad as well, right? Well, I'll go to Happy Evelyn, man. The Dolphins are dumb enough to think a Chris Greer 7th round pick would make an NFL starting quarterback. That no, they just have no choice. That's really what it
no,
is. Right?
they
They
don't
have no
miss
choice. And shout
anything.
out to the homie Rashad, man. We always love the homies that show love to us, man. Growing up is realizing Brian Flores was right the whole time. Brian Flores was right.
Was.
But this is one of the things. Now we want to give Brian Flores credit. Brian Flores also went out of his way to sabotage Tua, right? So it's a tricky conversation when you get
Herbie,
to
two
if you
things
really
can be
get
true.
into it.
Herbie, two
Yeah,
things can be true. Like he definitely, because he Tua wasn't his guy, he made sure he wasn't gonna put him in a position to succeed. But you could also say, well, shit, he was right from the jump,
and
right?
you can also say that if he wasn't such a stubborn asshole, you guys would have Tom Brady, right? There's a variety and a gumbo of not of bad decisions from a lot of people that are in charge that were put in a position of leadership. But it's not about that. It's not about this. What we know is that Tua is done. There, this is this
Baked
is
chicken, bro. Baked
there's
chicken.
okay. So the
Stir
the
fry.
the best way to explain this right now, right? One of my favorite songs of all time. It's a John Mayer song. It is a song about a slow process to an eventual divorce or eventual breakup. It's called Slow Burning, Slow Dancing in the Burning Room. Phenomenal record. It is literally about a situation that everybody knows is not working, but you guys are going to the slowest process to get to the eventual point.
Right.
The fact that you guys did this the year after you gave him $250 million, not two, three, or four, literally the year after you gave him a contract extension. It is just the most poetic irony that you could imagine. The problem is that it happened to the team that you grew up being a fan of, your favorite sports team, the team that you are most passionate about.
Herbie, of course we would pay the guy who up until that point had only had one healthy season, Herbie. It's not like Tua had a history. It's not like Tua had gone healthy for 3 years and we made the playoffs all those years. No, 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 no. He had 1 year where he stayed healthy. The rest of the team got hurt. And for whatever reason, Herbie, the Dolphins, whether it was Chris Greer, whoever it was, they
Right.
felt like for whatever reason Tua had some kind of leverage. Herbie, even and we could pull up the tape on YouTube. I said it way back then. We should make him play on his 5th year option. We shouldn't give him the contract. We should make him play on the option. They gave him the extension, Herbie, and what I said following was, let's hope for the best. In reality, what we got is the worst. Because now we are hamstrung with a guy. Herbie, we haven't even hit the meat of his contract.
Oh,
We
we'll get
haven't
to that. Let's save that
right,
conversation because that is
right.
a whole conversation in itself. And I remember when you had that conversation, you said he should play on his 5th year contract. And then you know what I said? Trevor Lawrence got $250 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is all of these things. There's so many microtransactions that happen in real time that you don't even think of that's going to affect something down the road.
Right.
Trevor Lawrence getting that contract made it to where you couldn't not give the contract to Tua. Obviously, you couldn't. Obviously, it's your choice. You didn't have to just because Trevor Lawrence got it, but that was the leverage. Up until that point, Tua statistically had overall, if you lined up all of their seasons, who by far had the best season out of the two? Tua. So
Right.
if the perceived guy that was less productive got $250 million, of course you're going to give $250 million. Of course you're going to give Jordan Love $250 million. Of course you're going to give Justin Herbert $250 million because that is the class of quarterback that we were hoping Tua was in. Even though you know those guys had higher ceilings, you didn't ever imagine him having a significantly lower floor than them.
Right.
And to
Especially
make
given the way he was playing at that
to
time.
make it even worse, the guy that is the reason why you had to pay Tua is actually starting to live up to the contract in Trevor Lawrence, who's having the best stretch of his career.
Threw 5 touchdowns the other day, man. Looking
Again,
good.
so all of these things have converged up into this point where the Miami Dolphins literally got the short end of the
Hey,
stick.
JPS, I know, man. I know, man. I know, man.
We all know, we know, man. That's
I
that's
know.
why we do. That's why we
This,
do the show where we do the show.
that,
Now
that,
we
that,
know.
that's why I normally go to the stew, man.
That's why we do it in
I'm not living
studio.
right.
But
I'm not
this
living
is an
right.
emergency podcast, so you're gonna get the third co-host, bro. Which is Rod's freaking fire
Smoke
alarm
alarm.
battery, brother. The third co-host of the Pin Out of Water podcast. But so last fan thought before we get into the financials, Rod. What's the last fan thought, man? What's your last fan thought, brother?
Herbie, I guess the last fan thought that I have is I imagine that you know I, and this goes out to the rest of the fan base, Herbie. I think everybody, at least right now, because we were on edge, bro. Like, especially, it was a big Monday night game. Many of us weren't expecting much from this team. Like, the Dolphins weren't gonna win out. We knew this,
Yeah,
but you were expecting more of, given the way they had played previously, you were expecting
yeah.
more of a tougher performance. But when you watch that game, Herbie, imagine being a teammate of a guy like Tua, and you're coming out to do battle, like the defense, like Herbie, the defense. People were talking about how horrible the defense was. Herbie, at,
No,
at,
no.
at,
It
at
was.
halftime it was 7-3.
I
It
was
was seven
there.
three.
I was there. There was no way that that defense in that weather was going to be able to hold up when they just kept going back on the field. At some point, you're just like, bro, I don't want to be on the field. Our offense
Yeah,
sucks. Like, our
yeah,
offense sucks. Our quarterback sucks. You have Jalen Ramsey yelling he's weak, which I thought was super lame, by the way. Like, that's your former teammate. And I don't know if they had any type of beef, but from everything I know, Tua is a stand-up guy. Like, even if you think he's ass, bro, that's still a former teammate, right?
he ain't got to show him up like that.
You ain't got to show him up. But point
Yeah,
aside, the defense came to play for a half until they just could not sustain it anymore. They're like,
right.
why are we even trying? It's 0 degrees.
Herbie, I'll tell you myself, if I'm on that team and I'm watching the way Tua's playing in that first half, I'm telling. I don't care if it's Jordan Brooks. I don't care if it's Terrell Dodson. I don't care if it's Minka. They say, "Hey guys, we got to rally." I'm gonna say, "Man, hell nah." They're not rallying for us. Herbie. That creates division. Like, you can't. You're not gonna go to war for a guy who's playing like that. You're not.
Absolutely, man. So let's transition. Let's get into a couple comments and let's go ahead and transition. What if Brian Dable comes in and makes two? Brian Dable is not going to be the head coach. Brian Dable got bigger problems, brother. Brian
Wait.
Dable got bigger problems. I think Jalen was talking about the tight end there because Tua and him dapped up after the game. Okay, cool. That all right, bet. Because I was about to say, come on, Tua, you ain't got to do that to Tua. Tua's a solid dude, man. But speaking of Tua and speaking of what you guys have gotten, man, going back to the Browns game, bro. These are the QBR for Tua. 4.2 against the Browns, 62.2, 29.2, 62.5, 28.5, 7.9, 18, and 12.2. Just not good enough.
And Herbie, that 12.2 is such a lie. Herbie,
That 12.2 is an absolute lie because it was stat padded.
right. Like, Herbie, I didn't even realize it because I stopped watching it again. Once they went up 28-3, I stopped watching it. I didn't even realize what Tua's stats were to finish the game. When I saw his stat line, I was like, wow, this is the ultimate garbage time stat.
Ultimate garbage time stats, bro. 100. Look, put it like this. This is his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last 8 games, going back to the Browns. 100 yards passing, 205, 261, 173, 171, 157, 127, and then the most garbage 253, most like fake
Most
253 of all
uninspiring
time.
350 yards of all time, man.
Man, so yeah, he just wasn't good enough. Mike McDaniel said after the game, bro, it was on the table, and then they made it official, right? So
And you know
let's
what, Herbie? That's that. And you know what? I'm at the point to where I'm ready for it to wipe the slate clean. I've mentioned this several times, but I do feel bad for Mike in this regard, Herbie. He hitched his wagon to Tua,
yeah,
and he might end up being a better coach somewhere else, and might end up winning. And I think Mike, with a better quarterback, could really make things happen, Herbie, especially considering he figured out what to do with his run game. right? Like he had no choice. He was forced to have to figure out the run game because there was no passing game because his quarterback became inept.
Yeah.
So it's a shame for Mike that he hitched his wagon into it.